Hey, welcome to Own Your Future, where we help you own your future by talking to local experts. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Patrick Scanlon, who's been in the real estate industry for 16 years, and I've personally worked with him on several deals. So I'm looking forward to introducing you to him.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do, and a little bit about how long you've been doing it for.
So I am a realtor. I've been a realtor licensed since 2006, so about 16 years now, all over Greater Boston, Eastern Massachusetts. I actually work now with my wife. We work as a team, so husband-wife team. We cover all over Greater Boston and Eastern Mass, and we work with buyers and sellers. And yeah, EXP Realty is the name of our brokerage.
Awesome. So you've been in the business in 16 years. You've seen a multitude of things happen. With what's going on in the market right now and the changes, how does that differ than what you've seen in the last 10 to 15 years?
Well, actually, I had the ability when I started. I was a bad and a good thing, because I started right before the market crashed in 2008. I started in 2006. But obviously, as we know, with 2008, the subprime mortgage issue was really what caused that crash. And that was a huge blow to financial industries across the world. But what I see now, I think I have a lot of buyers that have kind of been on the fence recently about, should they buy and what's going to happen to the market. And especially with interest rates going up recently, there's a theory with some people that, we're going to go into some sort of crash again. But from all that I've been seeing, I mean, Eric, you're a lender, so you know firsthand, all the people when I first started and they were doing the subprime mortgages, there was definitely buyers that were buying that shouldn't have been buying and couldn't afford once those adjustable rates went up. But all the buyers that recently have been buying are well vetted by the lenders through the underwriting process, and they're more than qualified. So I don't think you're going to see the type of foreclosure things that we had in 2008. And another big difference with right now, and especially since the last couple of years with COVID-19, the inventory is still historically low. So we're seeing, even with interest rates going up, I have some people that recently have said, oh, with the rates going up, the market must be slowing down. But, I went to an open house over the weekend down in Randolph, just south of the city, and it was still packed. There were cars out front. There were a bunch of parties going through. And I also hear from some people, well, I see prices going down. And that is true in some cases, but those prices that are going down are because they're overpriced. And the house, I still see houses, that one in Randolph that I mentioned, for example, it was very busy. It seemed to be priced accurately / aggressively, and it's already under contract in less than a week. So, I think we're seeing a little bit of both, but one of my wife and I's biggest things we like to do with our buyers and sellers is just to educate them on the market. And what I see now is, yes, the rates are affecting things a little bit, but there's still plenty of buyers out there hungry to get into a new home.
Right. So you mentioned something, the 2008 crash. I'm actually a little curious. How did you get through that carnage of 2008? So a lot of realtors dropped out of the market when all that stuff happened, and it was crazy carnage during that time. So how did you stay in the market? What about that time were you able to kind of just get through it where other agents weren't?
Well, I think one of the big things was a lot of agents and people in general thought at that point that it was going to be difficult to buy a house, and that it was going to be, why would I buy a house if all these people are getting foreclosed on? I think there was a lot of fear and things like that. But, with buying a property and owning and being able to gain equity, you compare it to rent. Even at a time then when the market was in trouble, people were still moving. I mean, no matter what the market's like, people are always going to have to move for one reason or another. And I think when you compare, in most cases, if someone's renting a single family house and that same single family house goes up for sale, if you compare what it's going for rent and what their mortgage payment's going to be, they're around the same number. And at the end of the day, would you rather put money in your pocket? I always call buying a house a savings account that also puts a roof over your head, because that's essentially what equity is. Yep. Versus renting, where every month you're paying your landlord. Your landlord's making the money. And at the end of the day, they could always raise the rent on you. They can always, evict you and try to sell or get new tenants in there. So there's more security with your housing. And I think it's also a great financial decision, good investment.
I always tell people you're paying a mortgage no matter whether or not you buy a house or not. You're either paying your landlord's mortgage or you're paying your own mortgage.
That's right. That's right.
Whose mortgage would you rather pay? So you talked a little bit about inventory a few minutes ago. So what do you see inventory doing now? Is it creeping up? Is it staying stable? Is it getting lower? What's happening with inventory right now?
Here to here, we cover a lot of different areas around Eastern Mass. So, in some towns I see inventory a little bit higher, some I see it a little bit lower. Across the board, though, just looking at the numbers as far as how many buyers are out there, it still seems to be relatively low. And I think coronavirus definitely had a big part to do with that. Once coronavirus kind of started going away a little bit, the inventory kind of creeped up, but we obviously still had a really busy market. The spring was crazy with the interest rate thing. Again, maybe some of the buyer activity has tapered down a little bit, but there's a lot of those buyers that were out. I mean, we were back in the spring. I had buyers that would make an offer on a property and I would get a call back once we submitted the offer. Hey, Pat, sorry, they went with another offer. There were 20 other offers. So if there's 20 other offers, between now and then, unless all those other 20 people bought a house, they're more than likely still looking. So, and what I'm a little bit seeing even right now with the rates going up, I think that might even affect inventory negatively as well, because I think you're going to have some sellers, current owners that maybe want to sell, maybe they want a bigger house, but they're locked into a lower rate and now they're afraid of the higher rate. So maybe they'll say, oh, I'll wait till rates go down. Well, that's going to be less houses that hit the market, and that's going to keep the inventory low. So I don't really see it peaking, unless I'm missing something. I don't really see a big slew of houses coming on the market anytime soon. So I think the inventory shortage will remain a thing for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so I experienced something similar. I had a customer go to an open house over this weekend, and there had to be over 30 people going through through that open house. And I actually sometimes go to the open houses myself. And I was at another open house, and for 2 hours, like nobody showed up. So it's kind of crazy how you're having a big difference between one open house and the next. What do you think the reason is for one open house being super busy and the next open house not being as busy?
Not every property is the same. So I think that's another big thing when people try to lump the market in as a whole. You have different factors. If a house, if you got a house that's for sale and the houses to the right and the left of it look terrible and there's trash everywhere and there's broken down cars in the driveway, that could affect it. If it's on a busy street, that could affect it. Work that might be needed to a house. If it needs an exterior paint job and doesn't have any curb appeal, people might drive up and say, oh, there's an open house. Oh, maybe I'm not going to go look at it. So there's a lot of different factors that go into, I always say that every house is not the same, even in a strong market. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a listing, on the weekend, we did open houses Saturday and Sunday. We had almost 100 parties through this property. Crazy. But it was on a busy street. It had some low ceiling heights, kind of things that'd be hard to change. And for a lot of people coming in, the price was attractive, the area is sought after, but once they saw the house, none never really clicked with anybody. And after 100 parties over the weekend, we didn't end up with any offers. So wow. It took a while for us to get an offer. So every property is not the same. But that being said, if the property shows well and has, doesn't have a lot of negating, like negative factors, and the other key is if it's priced right. Buyers nowadays, most buyers are working with the buyer's agent. So if a house comes on the market and they say, hey, agent, what do you think about this house? And they'll say, well, I think it's super overpriced. They might take it off their list. So if the price is too high, you're not going to get a lot of people in, where if the seller prices aggressively and they price according to the market, they're going to generate a lot of buyer activity. A lot of people are going to come through. And my opinion is the more eyes on a property, the better chance you have of getting a good offer if you're a seller.
Absolutely. So you work with a lot of buyers and sellers, and we've worked together quite a bit. So if you had a tip to give a buyer in this market, what is a tip that you'd give some buyers?
I would say first off, in this market, in any market, connect yourself with a good lender, connect yourself with a good realtor. They're the experts in their fields, and if this is what you're trying to do, if you were going to get your car fixed, you would want to see a good mechanic. So if you want to go buy a house, you want to get a good lender for your financing, and you want to get a good realtor that has experience and that knows the market. Other than that, I mean, really being diligent with the inventory situation still low. If a property comes on the market on a Wednesday and they're not showing it until Saturday, if you like that property, it's in your price range, it's in your wheelhouse. If you got something else going on over the weekend, you might want to change your schedule around, because if the prop, like I mentioned on this one over the weekend that I went to with the open house, if you miss that open house, sometimes that property might be scooped up, another buyer can get it. So you still have to be diligent out there, if you want to get a property that fits your criteria.
So what about sellers? So when you go meet a seller or somebody's just inquiring, what are some things that you tell sellers in order to prepare them for getting their house ready, and then also like the strategy of trying to sell their house? What are some of the things that you tell them in regards to that?
As far as getting the house ready, clean and clutter is kind of the two big things. The more that stuff that you can get out, and the better. Think about it like your house. If you had someone walk into your house, you would want it to look a certain way. And I think that's the same for sellers. If people are going to come in and want to buy that house, they're going to want to picture themselves in it. So they're going to want to see something that doesn't have stuff everywhere and is clean and is up to date. Paint is a big thing, a cost efficient thing that a seller can do. If you have older paint, you have dirty trim or things like that, it's not something that's going to cost you a ton of money, but you're going to get it in the back end. It's going to be less negative things the buyer is going to have in their head that is going to make them maybe not want it. And with regards to selling, as far as price is concerned, again, we, the realtors, have our experienced realtor who's doing a lot of business. We have our finger on the pulse of the market. So we're able to find the comps and find the data that's going to let us know what a good price is, and what's going to sell the house for top dollar, and what's going to do it in a reasonable amount of time. And there's some situations where we'll go into and say, we did all of our research. Pat, how much is the house worth? Well, I did all my research. It's worth X amount. And they'll say, well, okay, like I understand what you're saying. But we want to get Y amount. And it's not about what the seller wants. It's about what the market dictates. So, a lot of times that, when sellers come back to me later on, if we price high, and they'll say, Pat, why do you think it's not selling? I'll say, well, we right at the beginning, we were on a disagreement about the price, and now you're seeing it firsthand. And like I mentioned, again, even with that, using that property over the weekend as an example, if the house is priced aggressively and accurately, you're going to get the most amount of buyers in, which is what you want, because the more amount of eyes, the more amount of potential offers you get. And also, once you get into, with this inventory shortage, you've heard a lot about the multiple offer situation. If you want a multiple offer situation, you need to price in a way that's going to generate that multiple offer situation. And we believe that that's the way that you're going to get top dollar. We run into issues sometimes where the sellers will disagree with us, and they'll say, well, I want this, so let's ask this. And like I said, it's not about what you want. It's about what the market dictates. And the buyers are informed nowadays. Like I said, most buyers are working with a buyer agent. So as a buyer agent, when we take buyers out to look at a listing, if they're interested in making an offer, one of the first things we do is we look at the comps and the data to try to figure out the price. And, if it's not worth the price that they're asking, that's not what we're going to offer. And that's going to factor into, what the seller ends up getting. And, it can be a tricky thing sometimes, but with the right assistance around you, you'll be able to navigate it smoothly, and you won't be looking forever.
Yeah. So are you running into a lot of sellers that are saying, hey, well, the house down the road 9 months ago sold for X amount of dollars, or sold for 700,000? Are you running into a lot of people talking about what their neighbors sold for 9, 12, maybe even 6 months ago?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, once you see your neighbor's house, everybody's, antenna go up, and they start to think, oh, what is mine worth? But you have to be realistic though. I get sometimes where people will say, oh yeah, my neighbor's house sold, even if it's sold recently. Yeah, my neighbor's house sold for X amount. Like I want X amount. And they're neglecting to realize that their neighbor's house is 500 square feet bigger and has another bedroom and a garage. You don't have the same house. So
Yeah.
that's, we run into that sometimes where it's like my neighbor down the street, it's like your house, your neighbor's house are two completely different houses. They're not going to be worth the same. And again, the market at the end of the day will dictate it. And if you are serious about selling, you're gonna figure that out. I actually showed this weekend. I showed a property. I'm working with a gentleman. I sold his brother a house last year, and last January, almost a year ago, I had showed this same exact house. The house has been on for almost a full year, and when we initially made an offer on it a year ago, they declined our offer. They ended up raising the price, which doesn't really make any sense. And they ended up dropping again. Now the house is sitting there, but the agent called me back yesterday to ask me for feedback. I said, the house is overpriced. It's still overpriced. And, I really didn't need to tell them that because I'm sure they already know that. But sometimes when the sellers don't want to listen, and motivation is a lot to it too. There's some sellers that are just curious what someone might pay for their house. So if they don't really have the motivation, they might not come to a realistic number. But if a seller is motivated and is ready to move, likely with the help of their agent and the buyer's agent, they'll be able to get both parties to come to fair and reasonable terms.
So I wanted to play a little bit of a Nostradamus with you and try to predict the future. What do you think is going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months, roughly?
It's funny. One of my clients asked me that yesterday. I'm like, I was joking, rubbing my imaginary crystal ball and telling them that it's not working. It's hard to tell. I mean, obviously, there's so many factors in the world right now, especially with the recession talk and stock markets and everything like that. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, I guess again with going back to the inventory thing, already now that rates have climbed to levels that we haven't seen since I think 2008. You would think that might change a little bit, but I really haven't seen much of it right now. And I still feel like as the inventory stays relatively low, that supply and demand is going to keep prices stable. So anyone that's waiting for some sort of market crash, I don't really see it coming. And yes, I understand that rates are high right now, but prices are likely, I don't think, going to go down. Rates at some point, I think, will go down. And once rates go down, you can always refinance. So that's always something that you can adjust and that can eventually end up helping you, get your payment down or anything like that. But, at the end of the day, if you compare it to rent, because that's the other thing I've noticed recently, everybody's talking about rates going up, but those same people aren't talking about rents going up, and rents are going up to historical levels now too. So when you weigh the two options, again, if you're going to go and put a first last security or whatever on a rent, you might be able to, especially with some of the lower down payment mortgage options that are offered out there, you might be able to take that money, put a little bit more aside and get yourself into a house, start building equity. And I think a lot of times, people will be surprised even with the high rate, what that payment will be versus their rent. And when you compare them side to side, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I always tell people, I mean, if you can afford it now, buy a house, because when rates go down, you're just going to be able to refinance. And let's say rates don't go down, then you're happy because you got a lower rate than where rates are currently at. So no matter where the rates are at, you're going to be happy. One, because you're going to be able to refi. And number two, if rates go up, they're higher. And the thing that I see is if rates go down, rates going down have actually might exacerbate the buyer side. Like right now, it's real. You can be competitive as a buyer and maybe negotiate a little bit more with the sellers. But as rates go down, a lot of people are going to come off the sideline, I think, and it could potentially get a lot more competitive. So I don't think we should allow rates to affect somebody's ability to buy. In addition, right now, as a first-time home buyer, you and I talked about this before, that $50,000 forgivable grant for first-time home buyers. There couldn't be a better time for a first-time home buyer to get into this market. Like, I've never seen the government give away $50,000. It's crazy.
It's a great opportunity. And again, another reason why to me, it's always, and again, education is a big part of us when we sit down with buyers. That's what we like to educate them on, those type of things out there. That way they know the opportunities out there that they might not know about. So.
Absolutely. So one thing I did want to talk to you about is some people don't know is that you are in addition to being an agent, you're also an investor yourself, working on a condo flip. How's your condo flip project?
We're actually my wife Alana is there right now doing some of the finishing touches on it. So we actually have the photographer coming out on Wednesday to take pictures. So yeah, this is our first jump into the investment game. We put a good amount of work into it. It looks beautiful. When we got it, it was hurting. So we're excited to get it out there and see what we can do. I mean, and it's always been a thing for me. I've helped many buyers and sellers and investors over the years, and it just got to the point where I said to myself, I want to get in the game. And Alana and I have been thinking about it for a while, so we finally made the jump, and now we'll try and see what we can do. If it's a success, we'll try and do it again.
Awesome. So is your condo hitting the market in the next week or two?
Yeah, it should be on hopefully the end of the week.
Awesome. Exciting. Well, hey, that's great. So tell people if they want to get in contact with you and ask you about buying or selling, or just want tips about real estate in general, tell people how they can reach out to you.
Sure. The best way to reach out to me, either text or call me at any point. We joke around with people. We don't have kids. We have cats. So we're usually all available all the time. My cell is 617-939-4613. And you can also reach me via email. Our email is scanlonsells@gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, hey, thanks everybody for coming and watching Own Your Future podcast. Like and follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. And if you have any real estate questions, reach out to Pat Scanlon. And of course, mortgage questions, you can reach out to me.